Alors, je m'appelle Nepomdan. Bienvenue à Marvel Avengers Alliance ici. I'm just kidding. Welcome to Marvel Avengers Alliance here on G4G, folks. Today we're going to deal with the top all-time PvP scrappers. So as you know, this is going to be a top 5 list, and fortunately for this one, it definitely fits in the top 5, and we are going to have some honorable mentions. But let's go ahead and dive right into it. We can actually complete this list by talking about raw scrappers and not having to deal with going into too many that are alt classes. Right on the first page, there are definitely some standouts, and the first one is going to be Deadpool. Deadpool has fallen off in recent years, even in his X-Force suit. However, throughout the history of PvP, Deadpool was definitely one of the most active scrappers for quite some time. By the way, today's background soundtrack will be linked in the description. It is a Final Fantasy medley. So, now, there is a blaster version of X-Force Deadpool. However, the original stock Deadpool is probably the most trafficked Deadpool version of all time. Deadpool was used so much that there was even a PvP extended because of his heavy usage, where he kind of had a bug that he just wasn't dying easily. He's got some good ISOs, including Savory, which gives him a chance to protect people. He has a higher chance to protect with low health and a higher chance to counter with high health. It also makes his level 1 ability apply 2 stacks of bleeding. Deadpool has often been joked or rumored to be Justin Woods' favorite character, and it was the reason why it was believed he was so buffed. Everybody has definitely gone through a sequence in PvP where it seems like original Deadpool has acted on every action on your side of the field. You were either getting nerf batted or you were getting buggy. It's crazy. And for a little while there, he was actually really obnoxious with Pesty because there was no way of cleaning all the stuff. Yeah, you couldn't clean off any of the stuff that Deadpool put on you, especially the 2 and the 6. Now, it wasn't that often that you could see Deadpool getting up to his happy to see you, mostly because it was almost rumored to be coded that he didn't do it unless he got super heroic out of it. He also had some ridiculous coding in the fact that if you put Adhesive X on him, the pink bubblegum gun, or Nico did it, before he did his level 1, he would actually recharge. He was that mindless and that linear that if he was not able to do 1, 2, 6, and 9, he would just kind of throw a hissy fit and stamp his feet and go, "No, I don't want to do it. Fuck you." So, yeah. It's a shame we never got anything new for Deadpool based off of the Deadpool movie, but I don't necessarily know what they could have done in the game that would have been that different. He's definitely fallen off, as all of the mutant stuff in this game has tended to fall off a little bit. But Deadpool definitely has a place in the top 5 all-time PvP scrappers. Number 2 is going to be Omega Sentinel. This is another one that really hasn't existed in modern times, but it is still used occasionally and actually can still be used effectively in rising up teams. Omega Sentinel is largely classified as a scrapper because that's her default kit, and that's the ISOs that she wears. Unfortunately, since a lot of scrapper ISOs go based off of melee, it is a little hard for her to maintain scrapper-related ISOs because of that. However, she's got somewhat of a decent one in indexing. Indexing is weird is that she can only gain the classes that she's capable of doing herself. So she's in her scrapper form, and she gets attacked by a bruiser. She actually turns into a bruiser with her scrapper abilities. She cannot go blaster or infiltrator, but she can go scrapper, tactician, and bruiser. She enjoyed a really long period of time where she was popular with rescue. They were considered shield maidens. It was really, really tough to take down Omega Sentinel and rescue teams at the time because they were constantly healing and cleansing themselves and shielding, and one was protecting and the other was protecting. Really obnoxious. Omega Sentinel is one of my favorite people to bring the Flyer dailies and Scrapper dailies because of her cleans and her ability to change classes. She was pretty decent back in the day, and she could also show up again with Rising Up teams because she does provide herself and her team rising up. And she can also act as a tank in a pinch and also act as a cleaner in a pinch. She's disappeared a lot lately, but she was definitely a scrapper of note. Let's throw an honorable mention to Wolverine. Wolverine definitely deserves an honorable mention because much like has been said about World War II, Captain America, and Human Torch, Wolverine is one of those people you kind of work your way up for in the beginning of when you're playing the game, and then you get him and you're so happy and you slap him in PvP and you're like, yay, Wolverine. And then you realize he's actually somewhat decent. Wolverine's brown and tan uniform in his scrapper setup was really, really popular for a long time. This was all before there was level 15 in the game and he could activate his scrapper bonuses. This guy often jumped in front of attacks, kind of like Nightcrawler, and he had some solid counters to go with it. He's not really got a spot in today's meta at all because there really is no bleed meta, and it's very anti-melee right now. However, there is still the possibility of using his infiltrator setup and going stealthy and walking around all the protection and draining. He probably didn't enjoy quite the longevity that Deadpool did and Omega Sentinel did here on the first page, but brown and tan Scrapper Wolverine existed for a long time, and you often see, for some reason, a lot of cheaters are using the default Wolverine on their AFK teams. Don't really understand what's going on with that, but okay, thanks Playdom. Thanks for helping us out there. You're a pal. Number 3 is going to be Union Jack. Union Jack definitely has enjoyed a fairly long-running PvP because he was one of the first heroes that did what Union Jack does. No, not look Layfieldian with, forget having a 6-pack, having a 12-pack, and a chest the size of a polar bear. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Union Jack was one of the original people who could jump in on counterattacks and follow-ups. And not to mention, he sets himself up by giving himself stiff upper lip and capital defense. He is one of the Scrapper's best people at 15 because now he can activate stuff himself. All he has to do is flank somebody as a quick action and then hit him with Trench Warfare and follow up with Service Revolver, and you have an amazingly buffed Union Jack on your team. He's not doing too well now with all the bruisers, but with Rocket Raccoon, Spider-Man Noir, etc., 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 Union Jack is definitely somebody who can maintain in PvP and be used fairly successfully. Personal ISOs make him an absolute dream to use as a scrapper. Bounding is huge, and flanked as a quick action is absolutely huge. Let's throw an honorable mention to Sabretooth. Sabretooth really has disappeared. He's gone. A lot of people have mixed emotions about his personal ISO. The one that says that he doesn't have a chance to res anymore, but he gets his 2 actions right from the beginning. Apparently now it's bugged and not working, making the ISO useless. But Sabretooth was really, really obnoxious back in the day, especially like Ares. It was always a given he was going to Berserker and Tantrum in the first round. One of the main reasons why you wanted a Mystic way back when was that Tantrum having a high chance of stunning you right off the bat, even getting some triple stuns. He builds himself up extremely nicely by doing claw swipes, and then you just eventually do the brutal slash to consume all the blood rage that he gets. Now, if he's 15 as a scrapper, when you finally let loose on the brutal slash, you can begin to get your rage back up by following up with the claw swipe. So he's super accelerated. It's a shame nobody's using Sabretooth anymore, but unfortunately Bleed Meta is just about dead. So far we have dealt with 3 scrappers. We've dealt with Deadpool, Omega Sentinel, Union Jack. We have 2 honorable mentions in Wolverine and Sabretooth. Spitfire, you know she had to be on this list. Absolutely did this chick have to be on this list. She is probably the top 2 scrappers of all time. Spitfire is making a huge impact in PvP, and it's really, really tough to think of what will make her go away. Like her predecessor, Quicksilver, she is permanently stealthy, and there's not much that will affect that. I don't recall if Heimdall can turn her off, but her permanent stealth is absolutely great because it means she could just kind of walk around Scootum until somebody else deals with it. Once you put Despair on Scootum, Spitfire's still going to get drained, but she heals herself. And she could just power through the drain, to be honest. She does massive damage, especially when set up correctly. One of which would be the Combatant ISO. Because at 15, and that's really only what you take into PvP nowadays anyway, by performing a follow-up, she buffs her attack and chance of critical hits. And then Calculated Force is absolutely this girl's best friend over diamonds. Not only does the Combatant Empowered ISO 8 buff her up, her own situation buffs her up with Hyperspeed. Attacks can't be interrupted, takes 2 actions every round, increased chance to take the first turn, and the fact that she just gives herself stuff off of her level 1. And that would be Fast as Furious. And then Sleeping Tiger absolutely exploits it. And if somebody's near death, forget about a vampire. Voracious Vixen comes in, and she honestly acts better than anything in Twilight ever did. And Voracious Vixen just restores her back to full health. Kristen Stewart would do well to pay attention to Spitfire. She's got more emotion in that little mask than Kristen Stewart's ever portrayed in any of those movies. And before we get into the final scrapper, top 5 PvP of all time, we cannot include Cloak and Dagger because Cloak and Dagger uses Infiltrator ISO, so she doesn't belong here. Jane Thor might emerge as something. There's a possibility of that. Honestly, an honorable mention does go to Blade. Blade was enjoying a little bit of a moment in the sun, which is odd considering his vampire heritage, but he is a daywalker, so he's allowed to walk among us. He gets an honorable mention because he was used excessively with Spitfire to create a massive set of first turns. You might think, well, why isn't he in the top 5? Well, that's because Planom immediately nerf batted him fairly quickly after discovering what was happening with Spitfire and Blade, and everybody going, wait, it's 4 turns, it's offensive armory, and we're all dead. So, by when I say fairly quickly, I mean at the end of the season where it was used effectively. He just isn't quite the man he used to be with his new ISO. Everybody did a lot of work to go and get that thing, including myself. But unfortunately, it's just not what it used to be. He's still really, really good in the fact that he can throw his high stake as a addition to other people's attacks, which does a fatal blow. And that's one of the good things about being paired up with Spitfire, is if Spitfire pulls Blade into a fight and Spitfire's hurt him enough, Blade just flicks his wrist and somebody's dead. Plus, hey, it has a chance to stun. Unfortunately, his moment in the sun, haha, pun still continuing, just wasn't long enough to warrant him being in the top 5. So, that means we rounded out with, yeah, you guessed it, Bisquick. Bisquick single-handedly destroyed an entire class in PvP for years. Scrapper Blue Suit Quicksilver, often referred to as Bisquick, single-handedly pushed infiltrators out of the meta for as long as you can remember. Infiltrators were not welcome because of him. I mean, any sign that you can imagine above PvP, any arch that an infiltrator was walking through, they saw it. It's dangerous to go ahead. It's dangerous to go alone. Please take this. There be dragons ahead. Abandon ye all hope who enter here. I mean, before level 15 and people could activate their bonuses automatically, a Scrapper Quicksilver was the absolute scourge of infiltrators because he would chew them up. He's one of the few scrappers, well, he's one of the few people in the game, but it does tend to be a lot of scrappers who do it, like Shitterstar and himself, but then also Gorgon and Star-Lord. He's one of the few people in the game whose follow-up or counter is an AoE. So what would happen when an infiltrator was around, a Quicksilver would single target and then get free splash. Single targeting gives him better buffs than his AoE. As you can see from single targeting, that's where he gains his quickness, somewhat similar to Spitfire. Tag Team is a free follow-up, applies combo setup. So if he focused on one person, this is what would happen. You target the infiltrator, you get quickness out of it, you splash a tag team behind it, now that infiltrator has combo set up, and then you go right back after him with blinding punches, which consumes the combo setup, does huge damage, and then reapplies it when the splash of tag team comes around. He's given himself 2 stacks of quickness, which can be used for 1 mile punch a little later on, and he's given himself 2 stacks of quickness for his counters, and of course, back from the future. So his default was just the green suit, and it was good, but blue suit Quicksilver was absolutely one of the PvP's all-time game changers aside from Pesty. He was the one who did it first, and he was the one who did it best, as he wrote an entire class out of PvP. They just weren't welcome in the arena. Pesty came along and, of course, wreaked havoc for just about everybody for a long time, but nothing could be done about Quicksilver. He was used effectively with Null as Quick Null. He was used effectively with Jugs as Quick Jugs. He was used effectively with Psylocke as Quick Lock. Quick Lock is definitely one of the teams that he's survived the longest with. There's people using Quick Lock even today. I think he's a little overshadowed now by Spitfire, because Spitfire takes to some ISOs very, very well and gets to use 2 of them. Unfortunately for Quicksilver, you'd have to make a strong choice for him. Either run the Scrapper-related ISOs, or maybe do Risen Force, or maybe do Measured, but he limits you to just 1. The thing about Blue Suit Quicksilver that's kind of his downfall is if you didn't gear him right, he was just nothing but light pepper. He was a gnat that spun around in front of you and you're like, go away. And of course he got the Age of Ultron uniforms, and he actually arrived a little bit more as a blaster in this set than a scrapper. The blaster bonus did him fairly well, but again, you still could do Quicksilver absolutely wrong, and he was nothing but a gnat. Some people may disagree with me, and some of those people that disagree with me on this are people who like to be contrary no matter what. That's okay. I expect it. But I've always found Scrapper Bisquick to be a hell of a lot worse than any of the Age of Ultron versions of him. Yes, he does have that chance to counter melee and then jump in and protect somebody who's low health, but you have never seen crazy fucked up damage like a Scrapper Bisquick, especially that Back from the Future punch that you're like, I know it's coming, I know, okay, I got that attack off. Oh shit, he hasn't done it yet. Ah, there it is, my dude's one shot. That never really happened with the Age of Ultron versions of him, so Quicksilver definitely belongs in the top 5 all-time PvP scrappers. If I had to rank them from top to bottom, I would give Spitfire the number 1. She's a little bit more recent, so she's fresh in everybody's memory, but I think she makes a solid case for it. Definitely her father, not literally, but her father in the meta, Bisquick, right close to her in second because he ruined PvP for infiltrators. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter bringing an infiltrator to PvP. Scrappers are going to activate their stuff anyway, so by all means, go ahead, take the risk. After that, I would definitely give it to Deadpool at number 3. Number 1, probably in the annoyance factor, or maybe a slight number 2 right behind Quicksilver. And then I would round it off with Omega Sentinel and Union Jack, tied for 4th and 5th. I would probably give Union Jack a slight bit of a nod now for 4th place due to his longevity, and then Omega Sentinel coming in 5th. People are probably going to make a case for Daredevil, but not really. Daredevil is not universally a scrapper when he's used. He's often used as an infiltrator, so I probably don't really accept him even being an honorable mention on this countdown. Same thing for Spider-Man. When he was popular, he was an infiltrator, or he was a bruiser black suit. Amazeball scrapper, not so much. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video on the top 5 scrappers of all time. To recap, Spitfire, Quicksilver, Union Jack, Omega Sentinel, and Deadpool. Honorable mentions to Wolverine, Sabretooth, and that's kind of about it. And Blade. Blade a little bit, but his times in the sun is gone. I liked Scrapper Archangel, but he by no means deserves really a spot on this countdown, as only a limited few people really use Archangel to his fullest, and unfortunately, he just doesn't really count. I'd love to throw Hogun in there, but he's never really used successfully in PvP, despite the fact that he is a Scrapper PvE god, along with Spitfire. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. See ya.